hide something from a QSA if it had less than 500,000 numbers in it and it was not part of the authorization and settlement environment. What does that sound like to anybody here? Come on. What does that sound like? Where in an organization might there be something where there's less than 500,000 numbers? HR could be a place. How about marketing? The marketing database. Because I'm just going to do trends. I'm going to do trends for a month, and all I need is like a month's worth of data, and for me that's 300,000 cards. I don't have to protect that, right? It's out of scope for PCI. No? It's out of scope for validation. Well, now it's not the case anymore. So the trainer said something like, you need to have a way, as a merchant or a QSA, to identify sources of card data. What my guy told a customer, the CISO, he walked in and said, you got to buy DLP, pal. You got to do it before I'm going to pass you. It's not what it said, right? But that happens, making up a requirement. Show me in the standard where it says that. Not there. PCI is a baseline. It's tuned to cardholder data. I talked about it's not the scariest thing out there. Is anybody more worried about social security numbers sitting in their infrastructure somewhere? I'm worried about that. I'm one of the suckers that paid for LifeLock, I'll admit it. But I'm serious, you know. And if you look at some of the data that's happened, the breaches that have happened, Social Security numbers way worse, because you get a state attorneys general who have nothing more to do than to sue the crap off of you. I'm going to get all my buddies together from all my other state friends. We're going to go and we're suing you. You're going to have to settle with us.
It's rare that you would have the Social Security number of a customer, where the credit card is much more prevalent.
Absolutely. Depends on your business. It may not be Social Security number. It could be something else. Most people don't realize, most companies don't realize that they're violating HIPAA every day. Why? Because they self-insure. To get a lower premium for my employees, I'm going to cover them up to I'm going to cover a certain amount of the payback. Depending on the data that you have, that can mean that you're subject to HIPAA. And it's probably sitting in some lady's computer in an HR room, and I'm sure it's got a little lock on it. And that's about it, right? This is why the improvement to PCI DSS, now what I'm saying here, I'm not saying that PCI is, hey Bob, get off your ass and make better PCI standard. What I'm saying is that you can't implement the baseline. If you expect that quarterly walking around your store or your home office looking for wireless, looking for rogue access is going to save you from a rogue access point, you're really missing the point. And focus on the printed material part of PCI DSS. If you see guidance somewhere, or some Yahoo like this guy or this guy right here says this is what you need to do for PCI, if you can't find it in the standard, that's what we all have to go back to. Have to go back to the standard. So there's guidance that's been released on certain things. And you have the frequently asked questions. The frequently asked questions change, but you can still use that data as guidance. Remember, if it's not in the standard, it's not the gold standard. So let's talk about compromising controls, right? Compensating controls. The wrong way. Treat a compensating control as a shortcut. We don't need to comply to this thing. We're just going to do a compensating control. Don't worry about that. Encryption, no problem. We got a mainframe, no problem. I've heard that. Using an ultra-liberal or ultra-conservative approach. Merchants tend to be ultra-liberal. All we're going to do is we're just going to put another password on here, right? It's almost two-factor. It's like two-factor. Two passwords, it's like two-factor, right? And a QSA might say something like, well, wait a minute, you're making me sign up for liability on this too. My name's on this. I'm going to make you do 3 factors because I don't like your second factor. That's not so good, right? It's not the idea. You have to find the balance. And ultimately, a lot of cases, you lose sight of the original requirement. I've been in cases where companies have sat and messed around for 6 months on a compensated control because some guy just didn't want to do his job and fix something. And by the time we got that 6 months done, they came to the conclusion that, well, to fix the problem cost us $3 million. To do this compensated control cost us $10 million. Whoops. And we just wasted 6 months. Don't lose sight of the original requirement. Use them where they're needed. You absolutely need compensated controls. I don't think I've seen almost every rock that I've signed my name to has at least one compensated control. At least one. There are some cases where that's not the case. Big enough company, you're going to have at least one. Question?
It seems like you're saying compensating control is all bad.
No.
Like the CSO compensating controls are superior.
Compensated controls are not all bad. Thank you for, I'm going to reinforce that point. I may have misspoken. Compensated controls are not bad. They're necessary. in some cases. What you don't want to do is you don't want to get into a situation where I'm going down this road of a compensated control because I'm too lazy to fix the original requirement.
And all the way to I have a lock on the door, that means I don't have to encrypt the data here in the corner. I mean, that type of thinking is the ultra-liberal, maybe it's ultra-liberal, but that type of thinking in a less dramatic way happens when people say, well, I have authentication on the server, so nobody can get in. That means why should I encrypt? Yeah.
Yep. Question, yeah.
For some of the most difficult of the requirements, what would you consider adequate compensated control?
We're going to go through a couple of those. Think about which one you want me to do, okay? We'll come up with one. Use an approach that passes the sniff test. We're going to do it here in a minute, so start thinking. Use one that passes the sniff test. I'll call the sniff test like, come on, really? Is this going to work? You want me to put, so you think that I can tell my QSA in my bank that putting 2 locks on the door means I don't have to encrypt? Or I don't have to put a visitor pass on or something? No. And then meet the requirements for valid compensated control. Guys, go above and beyond, meet the original intent and rigor. So I'm going to give you guys an example, and then we're going to go to you. So who here thinks that this is a bad compensated control? Real story. It's in the book. Had a customer come to me, this was back in 2004, and he said, we've got a way to do this key generation thing. We're going to do it. Key generation, you got to generate keys for our encryption. So he wasn't challenging me on encryption. He figured out that he had to do that. It's like, but I'm not really sure how to generate a key. Here's how we're going to do it. I've got a program. It's on OS 390. We're going to use the COBOL random number generator, and we're going to generate 16 digits. It's technically, that's 128 bits of data. Anybody see anything wrong with that? Somebody tell me what's wrong with that. Go.
Sure. So those digits are likely to be ASCII or something, and the range that you're working with isn't beyond it.
Digits. They're actually
Bingo.
just digits from 0 to 9.
Yep.
Which means not just ASCII. It's a much smaller set. Digits.
Just
It said
digits.
Yes.
Numeric digits.
There are no other digits, but numeric
16
digits.
numeric
Exactly.
digits.
Yes.
Key space, that's the issue, right? 128-bit all of a sudden becomes 53-bit. Oh, there's the other one. Pseudo-random number on a really old system. OS 3, it wasn't a new OS 390 machine. That thing been there a while. Boy, there was a lot of credit card data on that thing too. So, all right, so give me an example of a requirement that you find hard.
Let's talk about data at rest.
Data at rest.
Two forms. Number one, encrypting the current data at rest.
Yep.
And then the historical transaction record.
Yep.
Okay, what's compensating control for that?
So you don't have the means to encrypt the data that's currently at rest. You can only encrypt, you're going to flip the switch, you're going to encrypt all the new stuff. The old stuff you can't do?
Okay, you do one.
Well, so I'm just trying to get, because that matters. It depends, right? We've got to paint the scenario. So let's call it that. Let's say that you're installing a new piece of equipment that's going to solve your go-forward encryption problem. You flip the switch, everything's encrypting. It's working. But the old data's not, and you got all these tapes, okay? So the tapes,
Not pages, online storage. Data where
okay, well, that makes it easier, because the one I was going to give you for tapes, people are going to look at me and tell me, are you sure about that? Is it really? So, all right, so it's online storage. So you've got to find a way to go back and retrofit that, or, depending on the environment, like if, let's say it's in a mainframe environment, you can use mandatory access controls and limit the access to that. And limit it down to like nobody, no human, no interactive login. Make it a process login. Because that way you can log it. If you have an application that you're using that's maybe sitting in the what do you call it? Why can't I think of the damn thing? In the CISR region, is that the right thing? Sitting,
Volume.
No, it's just sitting in kind of like the program space area, and you're going to go a CICS. It's in the CICS region. You're going to go hit and query this data. But you got to go through this application first. So you can log it and track it and make sure something's not happening. You can prevent a interactive login from getting access to that VSAM file or that flat text file or whatever it is. If you're not on a mainframe, it becomes a little bit more complicated. It just does. You have to go back and do it. And that's one of those questions of, okay, what would I do? Well, I'd scrub the data. So that could be an easy way. Whoever told you that you had to have the full credit card attached to the transaction from 7 years ago, has anybody heard that? Because I've heard that a lot. My auditor told me I got to have it for 7 years. No, he didn't. What he told you is that you have to have a record of the transaction for 7 years. You don't have to have the actual card number for 7 years. You can go back and scrub it. You can identify, by the way, positively identify any transaction. And I challenge you to prove me wrong. First 6, last 4, date and time of purchase, amount, and auth code. There's nothing in there that is that regulated bad data now. So you got a truncated number. So none of the other stuff matters. Truncated